Since 2003, this is the Sports Source, East Tennessee's #1 sports talk show.
Presented by Pipe Wrench, and by Junk Be Gone, and by the Garza Law Firm.
With your host, John Pennington. The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning and welcome into the Junk Be Gone studios for the Sports Source. We appreciate you joining us on this Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to all of you out there watching, including my own mother. We appreciate you being with us today on this holiday. It is that time of year. Lists, and rankings, and betting lines, early betting lines are out. We'll talk about all those kinds of things. Where Tennessee's foes are ranked for the upcoming season. Betting lines, how we would put our money if we had to bet today, that kind of stuff. Also talk a little bit about whether Tennessee basketball is right to kind of sit right now. 3 scholarships open and just wait on one player, or should they grab somebody? We'll also compare this baseball team to the previous 3. And we'll talk about Tennessee non-conference scheduling. We do it every year, but we're going to do it a little bit differently this week, and we'll show it to you later in today's show, including how I would schedule. And then we'll let these guys tear that to shreds. First segment of today's show brought to you by our friends at Junk Be Gone. All this month, when you get a 15-yard driveway dumpster, you'll get 1 extra day completely free. And it is a great deal to begin with before you get the day free. Call Junk Be Gone this month to get your spring cleaning underway. Also, they want to ask you for your help with the Epilepsy Foundation of East Tennessee, a great organization and a great cause. Next Sunday at 2 o'clock at Smokies Park, Strikeout Epilepsy Day. They do it every year. It's the 9th annual. Call the Epilepsy Foundation to buy tickets, or you can email there. You see that on the screen. Kids with epilepsy and a guest get in free. $30 gets you admission and a buffet dinner, and it is a tremendous cause. So you can help support the Epilepsy Foundation of East Tennessee and taking a ball game at Smokies Park next week. All right. Want to welcome in the group for today. I always start here. I'm going to start here for once.
Thank you.
Bob Hodge, Will West, Vince Ferrara, Chuck Cavaleris. You'll get a little graphic that tells you where all these guys work. Thank you all for being here today. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about basically the schedule that Tennessee has in front of them this year. A lot of media outlets have put out rankings. And a hat tip to VolQuest. Whenever I steal something from somewhere, I always try and give at least a little bit of a hat tip to somebody. VolQuest had this information, so I just plucked it. Let's take a look here at 5 different rankings for Tennessee's foes, and also Tennessee there in red, as you can see. But what you got, CBS Sports has Tennessee ranked 16th, or behind Georgia, Alabama, and Oklahoma. Fox Sports has them ranked behind Georgia and Alabama. They were 1 slot ahead of Oklahoma. ESPN has Tennessee behind Georgia, Alabama, Oklahoma. The Athletic has Tennessee behind Georgia, Alabama, Oklahoma. USA Today has Tennessee behind Georgia, Alabama, Oklahoma, NC State. Kentucky is the only other team on Tennessee's schedule that is ranked, and they're ranked 19th according to ESPN. So, looks like most of these folks, most of them on the average, think that Georgia, Alabama, and Oklahoma are all going to have better seasons than Tennessee this year, going to be better teams. Take it or leave it, and I'll let you guys jump in. Take it or leave it, there are 3 teams on Tennessee's schedule better than Tennessee.
I don't think any of these people
Wow.
have actually looked at.
I know how much you hate Oklahoma this year, so you jumped. All right.
And I don't think people are paying attention to what Oklahoma's roster looks like. Vegas has their win total at 7.5. Right, I think their ceiling is 8-4 most likely, and they're breaking in a new offensive coordinator. There are 2 guys on their roster who have ever started a college football game on the offensive line, and one of those was because he had to fill in at the end of the season last year dealing with injuries. I don't think Oklahoma's a very good team. I don't think they win 8 games in the SEC this year, and I definitely don't think their roster's better than Tennessee's.
Okay, so you don't think there are 3 teams on the schedule? You don't think anybody else is
Not
up
on
in
their,
that level?
not on their schedule.
Yeah, so there aren't 3 teams on their schedule better than Tennessee according to Will.
Yeah, and I think you kind of phrased it like clearly.
Yeah.
And I would not put Oklahoma in that category. Now, I think maybe if Vegas has them at 7.5, I think the ceiling might be a little bit higher than that. But still, that doesn't mean clearly. That just might mean right behind Tennessee when it's all said and done. Jackson Arnold, their quarterback, who's a first-year guy. His first ever start was in the bowl game, just like for Nico.
Yep.
Highly rated guy. So there's upside there. I think that's where that's offsetting some of their new players. So, but to me, it's only Georgia and Alabama that you could say clearly. And even Alabama, you got to wonder how much that brings them back.
And Oklahoma had to drop back some with the way Lincoln Riley left, right? The talent they lost in that set them back some. No, that
And
was
now
the
you're
one.
replacing Jeff Lebby, who just went to Mississippi State.
Right. So now I wouldn't have them clearly ahead of Tennessee and NC State. That would be a real shocker to a lot. I think Tennessee fans. I think Tennessee fans are already thinking that's a W when it's going to be probably.
Well, they were ranked in just about all of those
Right.
preseason polls for everybody
Right.
who thinks they're terrible. They were
They're
ranked
not.
in just
They're
about all
not.
those. And again, I think it says clearly, the reason I use clearly is 4 out of those 5 rankings had Tennessee behind Oklahoma. So that's why I'm
Right.
using the word clearly.
Clearly,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
So, yeah, but I mean, I just think right now when you look at it, maybe if there's a home field advantage that you factor in, maybe that swings it one way or the other. But no, I wouldn't have Oklahoma as like you're going to be a big-time underdog. You'll probably be.
Well, hold on.
Okay.
Always in a race to jump to the next segment. All right, Bob. Everybody here says no. There aren't 3 teams on the roster on the schedule that are clearly better than Tennessee.
And I'm going to agree with everybody. I think that Tennessee does have a better roster than Oklahoma right now. We'll get into later about Tennessee playing Oklahoma. But I think that Tennessee's roster, if everything falls into place for Tennessee, I think they're not clearly better, but I think that they are better than Oklahoma is. And I like the coaching staff at Tennessee better than I like the coaching staff at Oklahoma. So I'm going to go with the consensus that no, there are 2.
I would change my take on Oklahoma. Well, let's put it this way. I would be even more certain that Tennessee would be ranked ahead of Oklahoma if that game were played in Knoxville.
Right.
The only thing I don't like about that is it's played in Oklahoma. And it's not if it were the second SEC game they had or their third SEC game. It is their first game in the SEC. I think that stadium's going to be as pumped as it can possibly
Yes,
be.
I think it is too.
Especially
And
with
Josh
Heupel going back.
Your
Yes.
former All-American quarterback, or your former, I guess he was All-American.
Also, the best team doesn't win every game. That's not the
Oh, yeah,
best
sure.
roster doesn't win every game. But Tennessee's roster, I think, is better. I also worry for Oklahoma. Remember everybody saying last year we're going to be a lot more balanced this year. Arkansas, Mississippi State. Then their coach got fired. Well, Brent Venables is bringing in Seth Littrell or promoting Seth Littrell to be the offensive coordinator. I think it might be a bad decision.
I do think you're a little too down on Oklahoma, though. I think.
I
mean,
just-
you're,
those are big
saying
questions.
you're saying America is ranking them. That's 5 polls; they're all ranked. Whereas you make it sound like they are
they're
a joke.
all wrong. I think they'll be
That's
okay.
good. That's
I think
that's
they'll
why
be-
we ask these questions.
I think they'll be 7-5.
Okay.
That's what I
Yep.
think they'll be. So I don't think they're a bad team. Maybe they can go to 8 if they beat Tennessee. I think they're 8-4.
Yeah.
The idea that they're a top 15 team to me. I don't
Top
understand.
10 on some
I
of
don't
these.
understand
Yeah.
what people are looking at
Yeah, I
from
don't
the
get the
roster that makes them come to that point.
Well, if I were covering Oklahoma, I would say we haven't seen Jackson Arnold. The same things I've been saying about Nico Iamaleava.
Correct.
Exactly.
You know, the +2. Well, he's going to be in one of his first games on the road. Oklahoma. Well, it's also going to be one of the first games for Jackson Arnold out there. Now he's on the home field, so that helps. But they're facing a lot of the same things with a new quarterback that Tennessee is. So if I'm not giving Tennessee the complete 100% benefit of the doubt that Nico's going to hit the ground as a
Right.
Heisman winner, I can't
Right.
then turn around and say Jackson Arnold
Correct.
will. So that's where I would have a problem with somebody ranking them top 10.
I think they're Houston and Tulane are their 2 biggest tests before Tennessee. So once we get a little bit closer, if there's flaws, I think there's a good chance it'll show out. But for what we're doing now, I don't think I would put Oklahoma in a clearly category.
Chuck touched on it. I think a lot of Vol fans would be surprised to see NC State ranked because NC State, nobody is talking about the NC State game. That's
They got
That's a
a
breeze.
bump in the postseason. They got a bump when they picked up that quarterback from what was
Coastal.
it? Coastal
Coastal
Carolina.
Carolina.
But
Was it Grayson McCall?
I don't think people should sleep on North Carolina State because they may not be really, really, really good, but they're not terrible.
But and
at all.
NC State tends to be a pretty mediocre kind of offense, but a really stout defense.
They want to win games in the 20s. It
Right.
reminds me a lot of
Right.
Mark Stoops and coaches like that. And I just think Josh Heupel's system is not great for that unless Tennessee helps them out early on in the season.
And playing that game in
a
Charlotte
environment.
would be a factor in who's clearly better. And it's not like you're having to go to Raleigh.
Yeah, I would. Again, that's another one. I would feel better about it if it were game 8 rather than game 2 at a neutral site.
Right.
If that was your
and I
homecoming
would
game
feel
later
a
in the
lot
season.
better if it was in Knoxville.
Yeah, if that were your home
a
game.
lot better
Yeah, if
if
that
it
were your
was in
homecoming game at the end
Yeah.
of the season, in the start of November, and Nico's got an entire season under him, basically 2/3 of a season, I feel better about that one.
Yeah.
But playing in Charlotte, it's only your second game. I don't know. I think that's interesting that they're ranked. I think probably Vol fans need to see that to take them a little bit more seriously, perhaps.
Yeah.
Tennessee's been pretty decent in those neutral site games, whether it's bowl games or
Not in
Not
Charlotte.
West Virginia.
Not the one in Charlotte.
well, Jeremy Pruitt's not here anymore, so like that excludes that.
Yeah, well, let's see. Their neutral site game, they beat Georgia Tech and Atlanta under Bush. They
5
beat
point or
NC
so.
State under
Yeah.
Dooley down in Atlanta. They got crushed by West Virginia. They beat Virginia, who was horrible.
This is a better roster than those
Yeah,
teams.
you're
they've
playing.
beaten.
Yeah, this is the best of those teams.
Yep.
So, well, no, I don't know if they're better
I don't
than
know
that
if they're better
West
than West
Virginia team.
Virginia,
Yeah.
but of the teams they beat in this roster.
But remember, there were people here in town going all in on how Tennessee was going to
Oh,
kick
yeah.
West Virginia up and down
Yeah.
in Jeremy Pruitt's first game, and then they just got destroyed. All right, when we come back, the betting lines for 5 different Tennessee games are already out there. So we'll let Chuck and the rest of us tell you how we would spend our money, and by all means, don't pay any attention to us. Well, maybe Chuck, but not the rest of us. Come on back, we'll run through that. We got a lot of basketball, baseball, football, everything to come. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by A.G. Hines Company. The beauty of going with a local building materials company is that they have what you need right here. They don't have to call Tulsa to get it shipped in. Global headquarters didn't take their allotment and send it to Oxnard. It's right here. This is the headquarters. aghines.com to learn more about a business that has been around since 1920. 4 generations of the Hines family. You won't find that at, 5% of the companies in America. It is a tremendous statement. And if you have a do-it-yourself project going on, get to A.G. Hines Company. They can get you the materials and the tools you need. All right. Want to quickly run through, and we're going to have to do this very quickly, okay? Because we can't spend tons of time here, so we'll just get your quick takes. If you've got a real fight with somebody, by all means, let that go.
And stand there.
Yes,
right?
go right there. All right. Vols are a 5.5. This is DraftKings. Vols are a 5.5 point favorite versus NC State in Charlotte. Where's your money going on that one, Chuck? Tennessee minus 5.5.
I'd go Tennessee. Some of the things we just talked about on the road, and to see if NC State can score with them.
I agree. I take Tennessee in that one.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd take Tennessee.
Tennessee by 10 plus in that one.
Okay.
Okay, we'll bet later, but I'll take Tennessee at 5.5.
Tennessee 5.5. All right. Next one. Tennessee goes to Oklahoma. We were just talking about it. Sooners' first ever SEC game. It's mid-September. DraftKings lists Tennessee as a 5-point underdog.
Yes!
What are you doing?
Put your money on Oklahoma.
To cover 5-point spread.
Oh, yeah, plus a little bit more.
Oh, so you're going Will. You think they blow them out. Okay.
Yeah, look, I think Tennessee loses that game.
Will in that last
Yeah.
round.
Yeah,
That's what I'm getting at.
but I think Tennessee covers that 5.
Okay, Tennessee, you're taking
Close.
Oklahoma to win, though?
Oklahoma close, yeah.
So you bash Oklahoma, but you're
I don't
taking
think
them to
they're
win.
good, but I've watched that Florida team wasn't good. Tennessee lost 2 last year either.
There you go. Okay. Vince, what are you doing? Oklahoma minus 5.
I'm with Will. I would probably go Tennessee in a close loss. So I would go Tennessee in terms of those points.
All right, Tennessee covers. What do you do?
I mean, it's hard for me to put money on Tennessee as a true road team against a decent opponent, and I'm also going to play the over. I would love the over in that.
Okay. Yeah, well, okay.
Yeah.
So you would put your money on Oklahoma
Yes, I
as a
would.
5-point favorite.
Right.
I think I would too.
I'm
All
gonna
right,
put
but I
my
don't.
retirement on it. It's only $37.
Next up, Tennessee listed as an 11-point favorite against Florida here at home.
That's high. That's really high.
It's pretty big.
I learned my
I've seen
lesson
Tennessee,
last year.
Florida. I've seen it before.
And Tennessee can. I mean, we saw this 2 years ago. Tennessee's blowing them out, and then blow half the lead, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Part of me I wonder if, unless they keep the gas on the entire time, I wonder if they can protect the lead well. I like Tennessee to win, Florida to cover.
I like
Yeah.
Tennessee to win, Florida to cover.
Agreed.
Yes.
I would go the same way, and I can feel our viewers saying, "But we have Nico."
Yeah,
So
yeah, exactly.
who cares what happened in the past? We have
Florida.
Nico
Yeah,
this
nobody remembers Florida.
No, you got to take the points, don't you? I mean, right now, some things on the Florida you want to see if they figure out.
All right, I've seen a lot of people surprised by this one. I'm surprised, but in a different way than other people are surprised. Alabama is a 2-point favorite here at Neyland Stadium. People are shocked that Alabama's favored. I'm shocked they're not favored by 3 or so.
Yeah.
So 2?
Yeah.
2 surprises me.
I think that line will be one that really changes by the time they get ready to play. That game, I would take Tennessee at home, to tell you the truth. I mean,
All right,
I'm
so
still
Tennessee
thinking
plus
about
two.
that. Yeah, but I tell you what, I still can't get that second half out of my mind in Tuscaloosa last year. I know Alabama's had a lot of
Keep
changes.
telling yourself Joe Milton's in Foxborough. Joe Milton. Something I continue to try and tell myself isn't the case.
But he is.
The spot for that game's tough, right? Because it's right after the Florida game, which you know is going to be emotional. You know I don't think Florida's very good at the skill positions, but they're going to be physical. So that to me, I would say Bama minus 6.5 if I were setting that line.
Yeah, see, I'm surprised it's not three or four. I would take Bama, but just barely on that one. So
I'm going to go with Alabama, and I think the reason is by that time we're going to know a little bit about Nico.
yeah.
But until we do, Alabama comes in there with a better quarterback. So
Yeah, Bama just barely on the other side. I mean, maybe even 3-4.
And I don't think you'll have Jalen Hyde catching 5 touchdown passes. You think
no,
about
because he plays in the New York
plays in
Times.
the-
So
Just
it
Mike
makes
Matthews
sense.
is going to do.
Next, huge line for Tennessee's trip to Georgia. The Bulldogs are a 17.5-point favorite over Tennessee. 17.5 points. I can see them winning like that, but I would take Tennessee.
I would right now. I would
17
take
and a half.
Tennessee as well because I
Huge
just
number.
think that is a big number for two teams. One of which you figure is going to be really good, and the other one's figuring to be pretty good. So I would right now take Tennessee in that one.
I will take Georgia. I would buy that hook down to 17 though, for just being honest, for entertainment purposes only. But I would buy it down to 17. Then I would take Georgia.
I would go Tennessee side. I think with Nico's poise and a more competitive defensive line, I think that they're going to be able to hold their own. And yes, Georgia has a lot of talent, but I think that game will be just a little bit closer. I still go Tennessee.
I hear that Georgia isn't much of a home field advantage.
I tell you what, Georgia is the team that Tennessee has been least competitive with in the SEC.
Yep.
I mean, even in Hendon Hooker's year, Tennessee was held to 6 points with less than 7 minutes to go in the game.
They have had
It
the
is-
absolute antidote
Right.
or antidote for
Right.
the
So,
hyper
I mean,
offense.
that line may not be, I know it sounds high, but it fits the way this has gone recently.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would not bet against Georgia at home.
I would
I'll
say
tell
this.
you that.
See, right now, 4 months before the season starts, 17.5 is huge to me.
Right.
If we get to the start of November and it's still sitting at 17,
And
I may
what-
have a whole different
What
take
did
on it.
Tennessee do at home other than the Jalen Wright long touchdown
Oh,
run?
yeah, you open
I
the
mean,
game
that
with
was
it
your
and
whole
die.
offense
Yeah.
pretty much.
Yep.
No, I could see it. And as you say, Georgia's routed them. And
Yeah.
that goes back a while. That's pretty high.
I mean, it's
but
3
I
and out.
No,
still would take
you
the
lower
points
that number
there.
to the 13 or so, and then I'm saying, okay,
Right.
I'll go with Georgia.
Here's the thing, though. A lot of us here took Tennessee, or they took the opponent in 3 of those games. In 3 of those 5 games, Tennessee was listed as the underdog by DraftKings. And we just did a segment a minute ago that was saying that, no, there aren't 3 teams better than Tennessee on their schedule.
Yeah.
The rosters aren't better, but the spot matters. I absolutely do, and I think especially Nico, that Oklahoma game. Nico in his first real road start, that in a very hostile environment, that's going to be tough.
Good explanation. All right. When we come back, Tennessee's roster was pretty steady this offseason, more steady than anybody else in the SEC. So what's the value in that? Let's discuss that next. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Elkmont Station. If you're looking for a new place to try, for a new place to put in your dinner rotation, a place for date night, or a place to take the kids' night, or let's just not cook tonight, then what you do is you get Elkmont Station into that rotation. Get them on that list. Elkmont Station off Campbell Station Road, boy, they are fantastic. Same folks that are behind Scrambled Jake's. So if you like Scrambled Jake's Breakfast Company, the craft food, craft drinks, same kind of, it's a different menu. It's a menu that's always on the move. But it's the same quality that you get at Scrambled Jake's. Elkmont Station. Look up their menu, elkmontstationknox.com. You'll be very impressed. Crafty food and drink. Elkmont Station. Check them out. All right, want to get you involved in today's show. We have a poll question for you today. Now we're going to let you debate with us. The poll today, how many times should the Vols be underdogs this fall? Your options are once, twice, thrice, or more. Once, twice, thrice, or more. And it looks like, more. More is the leader. The people who got there early on the website are saying More than 3 times Tennessee will be underdogs this fall.
Interesting.
So what I need you to do is take out your smartphone and aim it at that little QR code. That'll take you to our website, or you can just go to our website, sportsource.tv/polls. Actually, just go to the website. You'll see a polls button. Click that, then you can vote. We like keeping track of what you think. It often surprises us. So chime in and help us there. We want to figure out your take on how many times Tennessee should be underdogs this fall. All right, let me put up a graphic here and show you what kind of a steady roster Tennessee's been dealing with. And it's not just the roster. It carries over to the coaching roster too, I guess. Tennessee and South Carolina are the only teams in the 16-school SEC to not have had turnover at either head coach, offensive coordinator, or defensive coordinator. 14 of the 16 schools have had turnover at one of those 3 spots at least. Tennessee and South Carolina are the only 2 schools to bring the top 3 coaches back. Tennessee had 15 players leave via the portal. That is the fewest in the SEC. Missouri was next lowest with 19. The SEC average was 25 players lost through the portal.
Wow.
You only had 15 leave. Tennessee also only brought in 8 guys. Only LSU brought in fewer with 7. Georgia brought in 9. In case you've not been keeping track, those are 2 pretty good programs. You are the steady Eddie of the SEC, very stable. I think most of us would say that is a good thing, that is, especially when you consider, again, I keep going back to this, what Heupel inherited, that dumpster fire and everyone fleeing. The fact that within 3 years you are here, shocking. Mm-hmm. But I want to know, what's all that stability worth? Will, I'm going to start with you.
I think
what's the value?
I think it absolutely matters, and especially on
How
the
much?
player
Quantify
side.
it.
I don't know, scale of 1 to 10. It adds. It's a 6.
Is it
7.
worth a win?
It's yes, I think so. I think it could be. One of the things that I thought has been really interesting that was said this offseason was Ryan Day, Nick Saban, Dan Lanning all said when you bring a guy in for the transfer portal, it's that second year that he really gives you something. That first year really doesn't fit in with the offense. So I look at that and say Tennessee has less of a learning curve than a lot of the other teams in the SEC. So that's why I think that matters. You're not changing terminology. You're not changing system when so many other schools in the SEC are. I think that gives you a leg up. What I think it does, though, is probably just keeps your floor high as opposed to raising your ceiling even higher, is that you probably have less of an opportunity for a slip-up somewhere, like in Charlotte against NC State or something like that, against Kentucky maybe.
I think it's worth something. I think it might be worth a win.
It's hard to
because of the
quantify it, but yeah,
continuity.
it's got value.
It's hard to quantify it, but your players aren't going to come in to the summer practice and working out on their own with, we've got to learn a bunch of new stuff. They're going to be able to drill home the things that they more or less have been working on, and I think that helps. When you don't have to learn a lot of new things, when you don't have to learn new ways of calling plays and all that stuff, I think it helps.
Yeah, absolutely. It is difficult to quantify, but I would say a win because you think about it, especially early in the year, when other teams may be going through more of a transition. Maybe it's you have 2 guys that have to kind of blend in, whereas some other teams have 6 or 7, and then that is much more difficult. Then there's the culture piece also.
Yes,
the chemistry.
That's where I was going.
One of the then go ahead.
I'm thinking about the locker room guys because in that 2022 season, there were problems in Tennessee's locker room, and there was jealousy about who's getting NIL money, who's getting this. I deserve more. When you got the same guys coming back, not only they know what to expect on the field, in practice, in the locker room, to me, you got a much better chance of everybody pulling the same direction. That's what I like about it, John. And I think, I think you hit it too. If it's a close game, Bob, if you're one possession with Kentucky, I think you find a way to win because you got the chemistry.
All right, well, we keep going back to that Oklahoma game where I think Tennessee's going to be the underdog. Is that an equalizing factor, though? Early in the season, I don't know. I haven't looked. Oklahoma clearly has more transfers than Tennessee because Tennessee's the lowest, so they're probably more than 19. They've also had coaching change at their offensive coordinator, so that's a new system.
Right.
Okay, is that an equalizer? Yes, you're going on the road for the first SEC game in Oklahoma history. Yes, it's the return of Josh Heupel. They're going to be frothing at the mouth. Yes, it's Nico's first true road game. At the same time, you got a steady program. You got a steady roster, steady coaching staff. You roll in there kind of knowing what you're doing. Maybe that's an equalizer there. Again, I don't know how you quantify it. Yes, it is why you'll beat Kentucky. But I do think there is value to it.
Oh, I agree 100%.
Well, you're going to get into a game none of the games that we've talked about, you're going to get into a game against a lesser opponent and you're not playing well. Is that where it makes the difference? Not going to the Oklahomas and not Alabama, Georgia, but going to Arkansas. Mississippi State coming here and it just isn't your day.
Right.
Is that where this could maybe make a difference and salvage something? Keep your season maybe from going off the rails.
And I'm thinking, too, a little bit about the other side of these numbers. Wouldn't Ole Miss be up there pretty high? All the transfers they bring in?
Now, see, they've worked despite that. But I wouldn't bet on that program going forward because sooner or later you're going to have the hiccup.
Yeah.
Right. Because I don't think you can sustain that.
Correct.
I really don't.
Nope, I don't either. I don't think you can consistently rebuild your program every single year
Correct.
with a bunch of mercenaries.
All-stars, yeah.
And I just don't see how that's going to work.
Well, does it ever work in pro sports when somebody spends a ton of money and brings in the super team? Does it work year one? It never works, right?
No, sure doesn't. All right. When we come back, we're going to shift gears from football just for a little bit. We're going to talk basketball, then we're going to talk baseball, then we're going to get back to football. But next, I want to talk about basketball and whether or not Rick Barnes is making the right decision. He's got 3 open scholarships right now, and it looks like he's just going to sit back and wait for Chaz Lanier, the transfer from North Florida, to make up his mind. Should he be out there grabbing somebody for the sake of grabbing them? Does he just need a body? We'll talk about that. Coming back on the Sports Source. Welcome back to the Sports Source, the segment brought to you by Southeast Termite and Pest Control. Termites, carpenter bees, mosquitoes, ants. They're the spring and summer pests that can do everything from ruining a cookout to ruining your whole home. The remedy is just a quick phone call to Southeast Termite and Pest Control. They have clients all over East Tennessee, all over the map. I'm one of them, and I can't recommend them highly enough. They do great work at my house. They do great work all across East Tennessee, and they've been doing great work for East Tennesseans all the way back to 1971, 50 years, 50-plus years. SoutheastTermite.com to learn more about this great family-owned, locally-owned business. All right. Tennessee basketball has brought in 3 players via the transfer portal this offseason. I've been showing you their names on graphics for the last month. I'm not going to do it again today. You know who they are. But they brought in 3 more guys, but they lost 3 graduates and 4 more guys into the portal. So as it stands, they've still got 3 scholarship slots available. It appears they're in a wait for North Florida guard Chaz Lanier. Now, he's going through the NBA process. Nobody thinks he's going to stay in the draft. But for now, he's sticking in there. The problem, it looked like Tennessee and I think Maryland was the other team that was in there. Now that list is growing to include Kentucky. And Kentucky has a lot of NIL dollars as they try and help Mark Pope, their new coach, build a roster. The question is, should Rick Barnes be grabbing somebody? I mean, he runs tough practices. You got depth issues. Do you want to go into a season with 3 open scholarships? Or if you grab somebody, does that mean you're not going to get Lanier? Or do you just wait, play it out? Hey, we'll grab somebody. If we don't get Lanier, then we'll grab somebody else. Is Rick Barnes doing the right thing here by just playing the waiting game at the moment, Vince?
I think so. The waiting game in terms of the portal and maybe bigger names and being a finalist for different players, I think Lanier is the guy. He can be a difference maker for this team, in my opinion. I mean, a 3-level scorer, gets to the rim, drives to the basket, which is something else that they really need. I think he's fantastic. And I think what Tennessee is doing is they are putting their eggs in the Lanier basket, but they're still working on late process situations. Rick Barnes said at the Big Orange Caravan, late in the game, they've been really good at bringing in new players.
Right.
And that is something, whether it's from Europe, whether it's guys under the radar. I think they'll continue to do that, and that's their backup plan, and they've been really good at it. So I think they're playing it just fine.
Chuck.
I just think that's the way he's going to play it. And I kind of, the longer it goes, the longer it drags out, the more I start to wonder if it's going to be the announcement Tennessee fans are hoping for. I just get a little bit,
Once year Kentucky's involved. And
they
got a huge
if it's
kitty
Maryland
match
or something,
right
let's go head to head. That doesn't bother me. But it's like, how long is it going to take to get the NBA evaluation?
It's May 29th, isn't it? Isn't it the end of May when they pull their name out?
That's their deadline to pull it out,
Right.
but this coming week
Combine.
is a combine, so I think it could be sooner than that.
Yeah, I'm saying,
Could
hey,
be, but I'm saying it could drag it. He has
Right.
when
Right.
you have to.
So
You have
I'm
to
just
by
saying,
May
hey,
29th.
we want you. You're a great player that thinks it's going to be a great fit. It's going to be a one and done pretty much anyway,
This
correct?
is one where you got to
This
keep
way-
your powder dry. You just got to
Yeah,
sit there and wait,
and
play it
let
out.
let it play out, and then you've got a plan B. And if you have to turn to that, turn to that.
Hey, if they don't get Lanier, I do think they'll add somebody late. And the reason why I don't think it's a big deal to not fill all those spots is Rick Barnes oftentimes, I don't think, gives his young players enough early playing time in a season to where maybe they can't contribute as much later in the year. This might be a way to maybe force them to trust some of those guys early on,
Yeah,
or there are fewer that don't get the
The
playing
only
time.
thing I don't like about it is we always talk about they have a tendency, it seems, to wear down a little bit toward the end of the year. They didn't this year, they made it to the Elite
Right.
Eight. But do they wear down because he runs a tough
Yeah.
practice ship over there? They practice hard. I don't want to see, okay, well, we went in with lesser guys this year and 2 guys snapped their ankles, so now we're screwed.
Right.
Because you don't have the depth. But one interesting thing here. C.J. Moore of The Athletic was asked this week, who are the top 5 teams in the nation in terms of rosters as they stand right now? He listed 5 teams, but he said there are 5 more that are in the running, and Tennessee's one of them. So as of today, without Chaz Lanier, at least this writer, and it's, to me, how do you say this when you haven't seen Milicic, Dubar, and Okpara on this team together? But he's saying that's one of the top 10 rosters in the country already. So that would tell you to calm down a little bit, or tell me to calm down a little bit. But here's what's interesting. If it comes down to Kentucky versus Tennessee, and remember, when Calipari left, there was all the talk of all these boosters are coming together and throwing big bucks into the kitty so Mark Pope can go get guys. So they're going to have a ton of money to spend. The Athletic asked 5 different college basketball insiders. That's 2 coaches. I think there was an NIL guy, et cetera, to tell them what the going rate was for a starting basketball player, an all-conference level player, an all-American level player. I took what those 5 guys said money-wise and averaged it out. And here's what it is. Your starter gets about $250,000 and up. An all-conference player gets $650,000 and up. Starting is about $650,000. All-American player, that's $1 million and up.
Wow.
Now, if that's what it costs, and you're in a bidding war with Kentucky, who's pooled all their resources, they spend more on basketball than you do because they don't spend as much on football as you do. I don't like my chances of going head-to-head in a shooting match with somebody that's got more bullets than me. And I think Kentucky's got more cash right now.
Alabama got a transfer from Rutgers that supposedly one other school offered him $2 million, but he still picked Alabama. So I think you got to be competitive. Yeah. It's not necessarily all to the highest bidder. It's competitive, and you can't just be way off the radar.
There's truth in that. But at the same time, do you want to get into a bidding war with Kentucky?
No, I mean, you're not going to compete with it. I'm not saying they would win that competition.
Right.
I'm just saying
it's not a definite you lose
right.
him.
What's the gap?
Yeah, I mean, maybe they've got some cash hanging around there and they're going to outbid Kentucky. When Kentucky comes out and says we've all pooled together a huge chunk to help our new basketball coach, I just think they're going to spend more on basketball than anybody else in the SEC not named Arkansas.
Yeah. Right. I think that was exactly what I was going to say. That's who they're looking at, too.
All right. When we come back, the Tennessee baseball team is back on the top of the polls. But how does this team compare to Tony Vitello's last few squads? We'll ask Vince and Will that next. Coming back on the Sports Source. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Madisonville Marine. Hurricane deck boats, Skeeter bass boats, Suncatcher pontoons, plus aqua patios, Corvallis. I could go on. No one in East Tennessee carries more different makes and models of boats than Madisonville Marine. That's all the way from Georgia, North Carolina to Nashville, probably past Nashville. Compare that fact, the number of makes and models of boats, add that to the fact that they've got unbeatable prices and they've got tremendous customer service, and you start to understand why there's no better place to buy a boat than Highway 411 North in Madisonville. Get down and see Joe Special and his team this week. You'll be glad you did. madmarine.com if you can't make it down there. Madisonville Marine. All right. I want to remind you of the poll. We were talking a little basketball there. Let's see how this thing shifted. It looks like 3 times Tennessee should be an underdog. Looks like that's moved into the lead. Continue to vote for us and let us see that thing, see the little lines move. Once we get over X amount of votes, it's hard to make the little line move. But keep clicking, and we want to keep track of that here for the next couple of segments. All right, want to talk just a little bit about Tennessee baseball. Vols now back to number 1 in the nation, which is becoming a regular spot under Tony Vitello. They beat Vanderbilt yesterday. They've taken the first 2 games of that set. So game 3 today, they're playing it, but Tennessee has already won the series. That's 9 straight against Tim Corbin and the Commodores, which has to be a lot of fun for anybody who calls fall baseball games like yourself, Vince. My question is, when you look at this Tennessee team, and let's put up a graphic here. When you look at this Tennessee team and compare it to the last 3, and you see what their winning percentages were, and this one is the second best to that 2022 group. You look at their SEC win percentages and records. This one, second best to that 2022 group. I want to know which team this compares to. And you can see, oddly enough, it was the 2022 group that was the best of those teams on paper all through the season. They only made it to the Super Regional here in Knoxville. Notre Dame knocked them out. The other 2 teams, including last year's, which was clearly the worst of those teams, they made the College World Series. So, Vince, how does this team, when you look at them, how do you compare them? Do they compare to one of these other teams, or is that just a fool's question?
I think the easiest comparison is the 2022 team because of the home runs. They're on an almost identical clip in terms of home runs per game, and they have a chance to get to them or pass them, maybe even to the College World Series if they keep playing. But it's more than just the home runs. This team hits for average, and they put the ball in play so much more than that previous team. That previous team had more home runs, but at this point, they also had a lot more strikeouts than this one. So Blake Burke is much better. Christian Moore's 25 of 54 in his last 11 road games in the SEC. And 28 runs driven in, 10 home runs in the last 11 road games. That is insanity. 427 on the season against SEC competition. So they've got a different type of team. Their pitching staff is different. They really rely on 2 starters that come out of the pen. Whereas that 2022 team, they had 3 horses that barely ever lost a game, and they were so dominant. That's why it was so shocking to the system that they lost to Notre Dame. So it's a different type of team, but one that's more battle-tested, that maybe if you put them side by side in terms of talent, maybe this one doesn't beat that 2022 team. But I think this, among all those that you showed, they might have the best chance to have College World Series success because they've been knocked down and gotten back up and won a lot of series.
Can you tell the excitement level? I mean, there's just a 428 on the road. I didn't hear you talking about Nico is going to be doing. You can tell you're the broadcaster over there. All right, Will, agree, disagree?
I agree. Now, here are the things I think that are different from what we've seen from that 2022 team, but I think it's the one that's closest. These bats seem to travel a little bit better.
Yeah.
They don't have as much from a draft standpoint talent. I thought that you guys had a fantastic interview with the draft analyst from ESPN that broke that down last week. But they don't have top
a little sports
line.
animal on sports animal love there.
That's right. But they don't have the draft level talent. They also don't have the frontline starter talent. But it seems like the depth of arms, it seems like the depth of bats, and they do win in different ways. It's not either home runs or it's not gorilla balls. It's not home runs or you're done. They can beat you a whole lot of different ways. So I agree with Vince. I think this team can advance.
Okay, so 2022, which means you're saying they won't make the College World Series. No, I'm just kidding. All right, very good. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. When we come back, LSU's Brian Kelly says LSU isn't going to be buying players. Ooh. It's interesting, considering Tennessee might have just bought one of his this offseason. But we'll give you the responses from Josh Heupel and Danny White, and we'll see who's being more honest among those 3. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Daniel Hood Roofing. You want a new roof on your home, but you want your insurance company to pay for it. We all know that. Daniel Hood Roofing has a history of making that happen, doesn't he, Bob?
Yes, he does.
You can speak
Come
to that.
look at my roof.
Yeah. If you've experienced a storm in your neighborhood, get a free roof inspection from Daniel Hood Roofing and see if you can't make the insurance company pay for that one. That's what they're going to try and do. DanielHoodRoofing.com to learn more. All right, let's take a look at the poll results for today, if we could. I think we've got those. There we are. The final verdict, 3 times Tennessee should be underdogs this year, 55% of you. And next, I'm a little surprised. More was the answer. 27% said more. So
I'd like to know who that 4th team is.
Yeah, really. So that is 18% of you say only once or twice. And then 82%? Yeah, wow, I guess I can do math. All right, let's take a look at some comments that were made this week. Brian Kelly, first, LSU's head coach, said, we're not in the market of buying players. Unfortunately, right now, that's what some guys are looking for. They want to be bought. Look, I understand that NIL is part of this, and we have an incredible collective, but we're not going to go out and buy players. That's not what this is about. Josh Heupel was then asked about this, and his comment was, players should want to be coached by our coaches. They should want to learn from our professors. They should want a Tennessee degree. All those things are important. And then Danny White said, is money part of their decision? It has to be. It is for every other American in every other walk of life. That doesn't make them greedy or selfish. That's a piece of the puzzle. If we're offering NIL packages and that's part of the equation, any one of us in our professional life would never take a job without knowing the details of what that compensation package looks like. Bob Hodge, which of those three quotes is the most honest?
I'm going to go with number 3. By a mile, I'm going to go with number 3. And I'm going to say that Brian Kelly's was the most dishonest, because he said that not because, we're not buying players. No, we couldn't buy the 2 guys that we really wanted, the 2 big defensive tackles that went elsewhere. So, yeah, they're not buying those players.
You also lost an offensive tackle to Tennessee.
You also lost an offensive tackle to Tennessee. So I think Brian Kelly, most dishonest. Josh Heupel, most agrees with the way I wish things were, that's the reason people are going to school there. But Danny White, I think, nailed it. Hit it out of the park.
Yeah, Danny White's 100% the most honest there. Brian Kelly, I agree with Bob, is the most dishonest. Especially, we just had a piece this spring from Yahoo Sports where multiple coaches told Ross Dellinger
lower-level coaches
that LSU went and got their players, paid them $300,000, gave them a condo and a car to come be walk-ons for the Tigers. So you're buying, you're just maybe not shopping in the same neighborhood or department that some of the other schools are right now when it comes to NIL, but you're all still buying players. Also, people have been buying players. My dad had a friend in the early 80s that played at Georgia that gave him a Corvette. You know what I mean? And he still had that Corvette when I was a little kid. So this has been happening forever, that they're buying players.
Yeah.
Now it's just
Only
a lot more money and on the up and up. Yeah. But for Brian Kelly to say that when we know that they paid players is ridiculous.
Here's the thing. He's trying to split atoms, I think. It's one of those things where we aren't buying players. Yes, we're offering cash, but we're also showing them our dormitories. We're also showing them our fine cafeteria services. Yeah, okay. But they're coming for the cash. You can offer all that other stuff. I mean, it's the Josh Heupel thing. They should want to learn from our professors.
Well, and
I would love to know.
Should.
I would love to. Well, they should, but I would love to know on how many official visits do players get here. And instead of saying, when are we taking the photo where I get to wear the black and gray and green and purple uniform while sitting on a Corvette, instead they say, who would my professors be?
Show me the library, please.
Yes, I'd like to see the.
Do
you have a special collections unit?
Part of what Kelly said also was about we want guys to come in here that we're going to develop over the course of time. Once again, that part of his statement was probably true. It's a good philosophy. It would probably make you a better college football team if you had guys for 4 years and you had developed them, but that isn't the way it goes anymore. That was part of his statement. I agreed with the other stuff, but I didn't get those defensive tackles.
He has always been a guy that pitches fits publicly. He did it at Cincinnati. He did it at Notre Dame. Now he's doing it at LSU. And he didn't get his guys, and now he's going to pitch a fit.
Yeah, it's kind of amusing. I kudos to Danny White for just coming out and saying, it's part of it. Deal with it. At least be honest. That's good. All right, when we come back, should Vol fans be more wary of road trips this fall than other SEC schools? We always talk about, they always melt down on the road with that offense. Is that an issue? Coming back, we'll ask the guys. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Safety Systems. Quality security systems are innovative. They offer advanced technological solutions. They protect and secure your home or office. It can be monitored, controlled from a central hub that runs right to your tablet or your smartphone, so you're always connected to your home or your business. Well, Safety Systems delivers all of that with their security systems, and they've been doing it for more than 2 decades. Call VFL JJ Surlis and the team at Safety Systems to take care of your home, your business, and their security system, or for that matter, your automation. They do a great job with that. Everything. You can get to safetysystems.com and find out about all the services they offer. I've used them for years. I guarantee you if you use them once, you'll use them again and again. Safety Systems. Okay, kind of a quick segment here. I'll warn you, I'm going to ask a question. You aren't going to know you're going to give me your thoughts on it, but I've already pulled the numbers. So this is one of the, I love it when Jimmy's here because these bother him. But I'm going to get you to say something, and then I'll throw out the answer and prove you wrong or right. The Vols they've had a clunker or two on the road in the last couple of years since Josh Heupel's arrived here. The first year they didn't have any big clunkers, but the last two, you had the South Carolina game where it just went south. Don't know that was the offense, though. Missouri went south last year. Florida went south. Whether that's the crowd noise or just the offense or whatever, it's had a couple of those things, and people worry about, on the road with this offense. So my question is, you've got Oklahoma, Arkansas, Georgia, and Vandy on the road this year. Should Vol fans be more worried about road woes than any other SEC fans out there? Vince, you want to talk?
Yeah, I say no because none of them really fit the profile of some of those disappointing losses from before, right? I mean, if they lose to Oklahoma, and some people already think that. Some people have them, Oklahoma rated ahead of Tennessee, so that's not going to be a big clunker. Then you have, obviously, Georgia as well. So the teams are either really good or really bad. Like Vanderbilt, Arkansas, that would be a horrific loss if you lose to one of those on the road. So
I'm not
I don't
sure
think
Arkansas would be horrific. Vanderbilt
But you're not worried about a road loss then. You're not worried any more than anybody else in terms of going on the road with this offense.
Not in terms of a shocker. I mean, because they could lose on the road, but I don't think it would be a shocker.
And I'm just sitting here thinking, well, there's some great home field advantages in the SEC.
Okay, I got us off track by mentioning the four schools. The question is, should Vol fans be concerned about this offense going on the road in the SEC?
I would be. I just think we've seen stretches where it goes from bad to worse. I know all teams can struggle on the road because it's so hard to win. But when you have that non-competitive stretch at Florida after you score the first touchdown, you're not competitive in several situations. So, yeah, I think you should be concerned.
100%. Yes, you should. I watched your team, and I think it's about the players, not so much the system necessarily. But we saw Missouri game laid down, Florida game laid down, Alabama game in the second half. You could taste the panic whenever they had the botched kickoff return. So I think the players are my concern on the road, this specific grouping of players.
I'm going to go no. I don't think this offense is a concern on the road.
Okay. We got a couple of yays, a couple of nays. Let's go to the graphic. Over the last 3 years, the school with the biggest drop-off from home to road with offensive scoring is Mississippi State. 0.3 points better than them, Tennessee. You are 13 points worse on the road than at home. Now, what I did here, if you go back and add up all the games, the average will be a little different. I took the average points per game at home, average points per game on the road for each season, for each of those teams. Then I averaged the season numbers together. It's easier than going back through every game for every team for the last 3 years. But still, it's a pretty good ballpark. So Tennessee, much to my surprise, actually, I didn't expect them to have that big of a drop-off. From home to road, they are 13 points worse.
Yes.
Mississippi State is worse than that. LSU, interestingly, is next worse. Arkansas actually isn't that bad. They're the best, but that's because their offense just sucks anyway.
Yeah, but you look at South Carolina. Outside of South Carolina, those bottom five, the most wide open offenses in the SEC. So is there an issue with having an open offense and then going on the road?
With the exception of LSU, you're saying?
Yeah, well, with South Carolina. LSU had a very wide open offense last year.
Well, that's true last year, yeah. Well, and that was just Kelly's second year.
Yeah.
So that goes back to the last year of Edward Orgeron? Was Orgeron before Kelly? Yeah.
Well, in Mississippi State, they've had so many different variations within
Well,
one season.
here's the thing, though. The one that stands out, you also had two of those were the Mike Leach system, which I would put, it's different than what Heupel runs, but there are some similarities, not in the style, but just in the overall, it is a wide open, well, as you said, wide open offense. Those are the two, and they rank 1-2 at the bottom.
Yep.
I just like to say
surprised?
I actually had the right answer, but I was trying to guess which one so I wouldn't be humiliated later.
And the thing is, I have another graphic with different numbers.
Yeah, really, so it didn't matter, yeah.
You're going to be wrong either way.
Fake news. All right, when we come back, let's compare the types of teams that have been coming to Neyland Stadium now versus the types of teams that were coming to Neyland Stadium, let's say 20 years ago. Let's take a look at how Tennessee is scheduling non-conference-wise, and then we will lay out for you how they should be scheduling non-conference-wise. Yeah, and then you can hate it. Come on back. And welcome back. This segment brought to you by Games and Things. Bar stools, bar stools, bar stools. No one in all of East Tennessee carries more brands of kitchen and bar stools than Games and Things. I speak from experience, folks, because the high-top bar stools used on this set since 2006, well, they came from Games and Things. Still great, never a problem with any of them, comfortable, and though you can't see them, they're good looking. Get to Games and Things for your next set of bar stools. I know if we ever have to replace these, I don't know, we're going into season 40 on the Sports Source, and I'm in a wheelchair, then we'll go back to Games and Things to get the bar stools, because these have lasted forever, and they are great. Would everybody agree they're comfortable?
Oh, they're awesome. They're wonderful.
They're very comfortable. All right. Tennessee fans will see 3 non-conference teams at Neyland Stadium this fall. Chattanooga, Kent State, and UTEP. Congratulations. I wanted to see how Tennessee's scheduling between 2010 and 2029, because you've got the big game scheduled on out. They've still got openings there for more of the duds, but you got Nebraska and Washington coming up. I wanted to see 2010 to 2029, 2010 to 2029, so that's 20 years. Then I went back 1990 to 2009, so kind of 20 years and 20 years. Look at that. Let's go ahead and see the difference. From 1990 to 2009, current Power 4 programs who came to Neyland Stadium: Notre Dame 3 times, UCLA 3 times, Louisville, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, Houston, Syracuse, Rutgers, Miami of Florida, Duke, and California. 2010 to 2029, dropped a little. Oregon, Cincinnati, Oklahoma, BYU, Pitt, Nebraska, Washington. Now in 2020, due to COVID, there were no non-conference games. You would have, and with Oklahoma coming in, you would have seen Oklahoma for a second time. But the difference is from 1990 to 2009, you had 15 of those games, plus another 6. We talked about Memphis last week. You had another 6 games with Memphis when you brought them in that was interesting. Only 1 neutral site game. So it was 21 games where you had some interest here in Knoxville. This 20-year span, 2010 to 2029, 8 of those games. And you played 8 neutral site games, some of which we ran through earlier. I just don't know if I'm spending money to buy tickets. There are 2 ways of doing this. You either buy tickets because you want to see a win and you just want to see them crush patsies, or you pay because you want to see an entertaining game. Yes, you want them to win, but I want to see somebody that can actually put up a fight. That's me. That's what I want. There are tons of people who don't want that. Mm-hmm. What would you guys want with your, let's say, take Tennessee out of it. Well, you're a fan. You're both fans. We'll let you say. But you two, just give me another, if it was some other school, would you want entertaining games, or you just want to see your team go out there and crush some tomato cans?
I would want entertaining games because I'd want to know and see the upside of the team I was rooting for and seeing how good they can be, because that only raises your profile when you can be good teams. Now, obviously, the whole thing should factor. You don't want to run a gauntlet or run yourself into the ground, but man, there's got to be some pride factor in who you're beating.
You don't necessarily need to be Florida this year with Florida State, Miami, and UCF.
Exactly.
That's tough.
Yeah, I want to see competition. That's what sports are about. Seeing competition and watching people compete and competing yourself in these things. I think this is the point of sports. So it's weird to me that college football does this. I also question the financial viability in a world where you start having to split revenue with players. That like this year, Tennessee's SEC home opener is week 7. That's what you're going to have. I think you have from a financial standpoint, and I think as a fan you want to see it.
Bob, I know your take. You want competitive games.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I am a season ticket holder, and I do not go to those games most of the time.
But Danny White doesn't care because you spent your money to buy the tickets.
Well, and plus we give them to somebody else who goes over there, and that might be for some of the people.
And if you don't buy them, someone else is going to buy them with their waiting list.
Akron was the perfect example to me. I said, I want to see entertaining games. And then you schedule Akron, it's a sellout. I guess we're wrong on what we want to see.
Yeah, I think Danny White has nailed it, that people are more than you're going to have to be be and that's what, if that insults you, good. It should, because that's what you're trying to be. If you decide, well, the only way we can be good is to play Akron and Kent State and UTEP and Chattanooga, I'm sorry, I'm going to make fun of you for being Kentucky.
Look at your non-conference games. Your best non-conference games in Charlotte. It's not even a home game.
Yep.
That's what bothers me, I think, more and more And while you're doing that,
And
I
nobody's
understand
going
the
to
reasoning.
confuse North
You've got
Carolina
Syracuse
State
next week,
with
next
Notre
year in Atlanta.
Dame or Oregon.
Yeah,
I mean, you used to have a premier.
UCLA, I mean,
Yeah, a premier. Well, UCLA 3 trips in
Right.
that 20 years. Notre Dame 3 trips in that 20 years. Memphis 6 times, which is basically 3 times a decade, which we talked about last week would be about right. Mix them in,
Right.
And again, Memphis isn't some great shakes. Beats the hell out of Kent State and UTEP.
Right.
I would rather see Memphis. That's interesting.
They're still
that
better
would be
than-
the neutral site. Play that in Nashville if you want to.
But we love football. And if you look at it, I think Danny White's hit on the thing for a lot of people who go to games. It's a social event. So they're building that Atlantic Station thing over G10, and they're going to have an entertainment district and all of that stuff. I think there are a lot of people out there that don't know what they're looking at, that are, and not people watching this program, of course, but there are a lot of people that go to games for the social side of it, not
Rather than
necessarily
the
football.
hardcore sports
That's
side.
the current model in a
But
lot
you know
of
what?
sports.
We
yeah.
can still sit around and talk about Tennessee and UCLA games years after they've been played.
Nobody. It's great.
Were you going to sit around and talk about Tennessee, Kent State? Boy, that kickoff return
Not to
had
mention the
everybody
fact
on
that
unless
the
you
field.
One of
lose.
your gimmies used to be Georgia Tech.
Right.
None of your gimmies even approach Georgia Tech.
Well, the other thing,
stats,
there's
right?
this idea that it's a guarantee. That was Georgia State.
Yeah.
See, I would if you had played Georgia Tech and lost to Georgia Tech, that's one thing.
Right.
You lost to Georgia State. That's more embarrassing. To me, I don't give you credit when you win those games, and I'm going to mock you mercilessly when you lose those games because you're scheduling patsies. But it just tells me we're cowards. It's the only thing I disliked about Danny White.
No,
so
they're
far.
just trying to stay undefeated. They're trying to stay undefeated for as long as they can.
and get to make sure you schedule your way into a bowl game.
Yeah,
Because the
yeah.
SEC 's
But
tough.
it also it gouges your season ticket holder. Pigs get fed, hogs get slaughtered. There will come a time, I think, where they'll either change or they will go under for doing this
nailed it.
because you've
He
got to
nailed it.
start split revenue.
Sold it out for Akron.
Yeah,
They did.
Sold it out for
that
Akron.
changed me. That
Sold it out
amazed
for
me. I
right.
think we would have said 80,000, maybe 100,000.
When we come back, so how should UT schedule their non-conference? I have a plan.
And we'll shoot it down.
That's right. I will show the plan to spur conversation. I'll show you how they should be scheduling. It's not insane, but it's much more interesting, in my opinion. Then these guys can shoot it down. Come on back. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Paper Be Gone. Every week, there's some new alert that another company has had its records hacked. Identity theft is a massive problem. So how can an East Tennessee person or business protect themselves from all this chicanery? Well, you can start by having Paper Be Gone destroy your old records rather than just tossing them out. Have them shred them, take them away, dispose of them in an environmentally friendly way. You can even get them to destroy old hard drives on old computers. Don't throw that old computer out. Some scumbag's going to grab it, figure out what you've got in there, open that thing up, and figure out your history. You don't need that. Paper Be Gone can protect you, your home, your company, your business. Paper Be Gone, from the same great folks that bring you Junk Be Gone. These are great, great people. Give them a shout this week. Visit paperbegone.com. All right, so let's say, here's how I would do it. And you all can get your guns out.
I got my pen ready, John.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously.
See, I don't just, that's right. Said that to the wrong guy. All right. Let's say the SEC sticks with an 8-game conference schedule, being the cowards that they are. I would hate it, but they've shown no signs of wanting to go to 9. If that's the case, then Tennessee would play 4 home games and 4 road games every year. Here's what I would do. If I'm the athletic director at Tennessee or any of these SEC schools, this is the way I would do it. And we're starting, just to give you an example, we'll start in 2026. Imagine all of the current contracts were just null and void, thrown out. Here's how UT should schedule, in my opinion. The first thing I'm going to do, you would get 8 conference games, obviously, 4 at home, 4 away. I'm going to give you 7 guaranteed home games a year. So you're going to get 3 home games, and 1 non-conference game is going to be on the road, either to a good program as part of an intersectional rivalry, the way Tennessee used to do it, or to a really good venue, something with college football history where fans could go and say, wow, I've been to X. Or just a good city for fans to visit. Danny White doesn't believe fans like to travel. I don't agree with that. I think they do. I think there are still fans that enjoyed going to Oregon, Oklahoma, UCLA, Cal over the years. I would give you 2 games versus Power 4 teams every season. Doesn't mean the 2 top teams in their conferences, just means 2 Power 4 teams. So, sorry, Kent State and UTEP. And then I would give you, even though I despise it, I would allow them to keep one game against the in-state FCS cannon fodder. That means Chattanooga, UT Martin, East Tennessee State, and who's the other one? Austin Peay.
Yeah.
You would keep those, which, again, I hate them. But so what would that look like? I'm just going to give you an example. Don't pay attention to the specific teams so much as the type of team. But let's go ahead and look at this next graphic. All right, so what you got here, like in 2026, you got USC at home, at Georgia Tech, Southern Miss at home, and then Chattanooga. So if you look at this across the board, that top line, that's your intersectional rivalry. So it's USC, then the next year at USC. It's Notre Dame, at Notre Dame. Ohio State, you've never been there. They'd be at Ohio State the next year. UCLA, traditional rivalry with them. Wisconsin, you've never been there. They've never been here. Come on, that's the kind of game you need to be playing. So that's your top line. And every other year you're on the road with one of those. Then I would create a second line, which would be teams that either have a history with you, or it's a great city, or it's a city where fans would enjoy going, meaning at Georgia Tech one year, Georgia Tech home the next. At Tulane, who doesn't want to go to New Orleans? Are you kidding me? Tulane next. At Memphis, put them on this kid. At UNLV, there's no danger in playing UNLV, but you get a trip to Vegas. Are you kidding me? Yes, these coaches would scream, but if other SEC teams can schedule Army and Navy, you can too. Stop being cowards. Wouldn't you like to see West Point? I would like to see a game at West Point. Then you go and just buy traditional games. You know, you've played Southern Miss a million times, Duke, UAB, BC, Wake Forest, Maryland. Those kind of games, you buy them, it's a one-off. And then you get those crummy FCS games at the bottom. But, for example, USC, at Georgia Tech, Southern Miss, Chattanooga. Let's say 2030. It's Ohio State, then it's at Memphis, Wake Forest, Chattanooga. That's not going to scare anybody to death. That's not the end of the world, but it's a far sight better than what you get now, in my opinion. Now, you guys can tell me if I am wrong or not.
No,
I'm not going to
100%.
tell you you're wrong. I think that is a good formula. I would love to see that.
I think it's much better. The only one thing is I don't know if you're going to be able to in this climate buy those matchups with the other Power Four schools. That
may change, that may change. I agree with you. That may be tough, but I think there's still going to be some that do it. You still got some that do it now.
Yes, and I think your win total is still going to be the same if you're so concerned about it, like the athletics departments are right now. But I think that for the fan, you can probably charge more money, or get more money, or have an even longer waiting list if that's what your schedule is.
The odds are, if you're competitive in the SEC, then that kind of schedule, you're going to be very competitive with it. You don't have to play 3 Kent States in a row and then Tennessee Martin.
Yeah.
If you're good, it doesn't matter.
I think it's more than being competitive in those games, because Tennessee will probably be favorite to win a lot of those games. It's the risk of losing. And I think that's the frustrating thing with the current pattern of one, Power Four, 2 Group of 5 or Group of 6 or whatever, and then 1 FCS. It's a lot of these teams don't have the risk of losing. So that your pattern, I like it, but that would eliminate as much risk of losing too.
So you're saying, well, exactly, which
be-
I call cowardice.
Yeah,
But,
cowardice.
no,
Well,
it is
I mean,
cowardice.
John,
But that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, it would make it more
Better to be-
difficult. But I'm
yeah, you
fine
don't-
with it.
yeah,
But I'm
you're-
just saying.
So what you're saying is UT, and I don't agree. I don't disagree. I think you're right. UT is too scared to play Memphis, so they play Western Michigan instead. I find that offensive.
You could do two of those games, right? Maybe not 3, but that would be better than what they have now. Correct? Here's what, and I agree with Vince on this. I think Tennessee's administration looks at it. If we lose 1 non-conference game, we lose 2 SEC games, we're not in the playoff.
Coward.
I mean, I think
Other
that's kind
schools
of
are
how.
scheduling. Other schools are scheduling better than that.
LSU's
You're saying
playing
we need to be
USC.
Kentucky.
LSU's playing USC and UCLA in September this year.
Florida.
Right?
Yeah,
Well,
Florida's
yeah.
got
and
you already said.
And here's
Yep.
the thing.
Yep.
John's
Everybody else can do
line
it.
3 is now your top. That is
That would be the
basically
best of your non-conference.
The top of what you're doing.
that's
That's
true.
What'll be interesting to see is with the 12-team playoff, does it change any of that philosophy in looking at it? And what about TV? Because you get better TV inventory with a schedule like
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I don't like Tennessee looking around the conference and saying, we can't schedule like Florida and LSU.
Yeah,
I mean, Florida's worse than you, are they not?
Yeah.
So I find that offensive. As someone who grew up watching Tennessee, you used to be the best of the best. I would get better. But we appreciate it, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching. Happy Mother's Day to everybody, including mine. And we will see you next Sunday right back here for the Sports Source. Appreciate you.